Alright, so the Switch is kind of becoming synonymous as a machine filled with some of the most impressive ports, would you say?
In some respects, yeah.
And we've had a load this year, like a lot. So we've come up with a list of the 10 best ports on the Nintendo Switch, and we're going to go through them.
Yeah, so we've done a couple of lists like this before, or Mark has, to be fair. So we'll try and populate this one with the newer games, of course, but there will be obviously some older ones that need a mention again, you know?
Absolutely. If you want to save 10% on any of these, use code SwitchUp over at our website, switchup.gg. And those are instantly delivered. And we've got links to physical discounts at PlayAsia.
Yep.
It's all in the description.
Lovely. So, which games are the most impressive ports on the Switch? Well, let's find out. So the first one we're going to talk about then is one that came out this year, and that is Nier Automata.
Yeah, this is a third-person action-adventure game. It sees you playing as an android, a female android, who drops down onto Earth to essentially go about trying to help restore.
Right.
There are huge mechs that you fight. There are lots of smaller battles that use a system that we've seen in a few games now, where there's like a red area and you've got to dodge out the way and stuff like that.
Yep.
But there's one of those mechanics, and I said it in the other video, whereby when you die, you have to go back to your old body. And you said that was a bit similar to another game.
Yeah, you mentioned that fast travel is unlocked quite late within you, and we just happened to be talking about, or having just spoken about Shin Megami Tensei 5, and that's exactly what happens in that game as well. It's not something you expect. Normally that's quite an early unlock, isn't it, in games?
Exactly right. On a technical level, you're looking at 30 FPS, pretty much locked out. Resolution's pretty good. It looks very impressive, really, for what you're getting. I would say it's one that benefits from the Switch's small screen. You know, you shrink it down.
Yeah, of course.
It just looks better. But overall, really good port. And it was really nice to see Square move away from the ridiculous idea of releasing cloud versions of their best games.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do believe this is like the turning point. I don't think they're going to go back to cloud, personally.
I would hope so, because that is becoming quite a prominent feature, isn't it, of the Switch? And in some, with respect to some games, if they just cannot exist on the Switch any other way, then fair enough. But there have been some where you think, surely,
Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, exactly right.
Next up then, we've got Persona 5 Royal.
Yeah, so another one that came out this year, of course, a game that was very well loved, a series that is very well loved. It was on the PlayStation 4, wasn't it, and the Xbox, I believe.
Yeah, and again, it wasn't one that's particularly taxing. You know, everyone's saying, it's going to struggle to run on the Switch. There's nothing here that should really tax the Switch too much. We were talking about this the other day. Essentially, the Switch on a hardware level is very similar to a low-powered PS4, maybe some Xbox 360 level in there, but still more than enough for what's going on here. There are some cutbacks, things like the resolutions drop down in certain areas, but they've kept everything native, like that you would read on screen, and it runs beautifully. Like, this is silky.
Yeah, I mean, you've just mentioned kind of that the specs there in terms of a very basic level, but obviously a lot of the games, if not all of the games we're talking about, would have either been released on the Xbox 360, PS3, or the PS4. So there is no reason why they shouldn't run well on the Switch, and these games do, which is great.
Yeah, so a really, really good JRPG. Massively long though, so you need to make sure you've invested some serious time into this one.
Okay, next one, maybe slightly different then. This is a game called Tunic.
Yeah, so Tunic, I haven't put in enough time to review it, which is why it hasn't got a full review on the channel. But it's a top-down Souls-like, weirdly enough. When you look at it, you wouldn't think that.
No, and I didn't think that at all. I thought it was going to be more like a Zelda type game without that kind of brutal, punishing combat. But doesn't it also have quite an interesting mechanic that is to do with the instruction manual?
Yeah, so you've got your instruction manual is essentially your guide for the whole game. It includes your map. It looks beautiful. It's the kind of instruction manual you wish was in every physical game, you know?
Exactly.
I wonder if this physical of this does have an instruction manual.
If it does, that would be a touch of genius, wouldn't
You'd
it?
hope so.
That's the marketing right there, isn't it?
But it's very difficult. So despite looks, it's a really tricky game. It reminds me a little bit of Death's Door, aesthetically. Performance is okay. It runs well. It's quite a challenging game to run despite the way it looks. There are lots of intricate lighting effects. There's real-time shadows. Resolution's all right in docked and handheld, But as far as ports go, I think it's pretty decent, to be honest, especially as one of the newer ones we've had released on Switch.
Yeah, I think it's a good point that you raised there, or a good talking point at least, in that games like Tunic, you might not necessarily realise the level of work that goes into it, and it's similar to a game like Ori, say,
definitely,
isn't it? Yeah. Where you know things like the lighting maybe get overlooked because of the art style. So yeah, as you say, the fact that it runs well is good.
Yeah, and I believe Ori was on the last one of these videos because it is an incredible port.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, next up then, we've got Portal 1 and 2, which I was delighted to see come out. Yeah. This obviously runs on the Source engine, which is Valve's proprietary engine that they used for Half-Life 2 and above, I believe. I don't know if it was on the earlier ones, but it kind of gave me hopes that we might see Half-Life come across to Switch.
Yeah, I mean, I'm shocked that we haven't seen the orange box come over, you know? I mean, that just seems tailor-made, doesn't it, to be ported across?
Yeah,
but, yeah, you know, that's for another day, I'm sure. But in terms of these games, Portal 1 and 2, I've only ever played the first one.
Okay.
And that was way back in the day when it first came out. But these are fantastic physics-based puzzle games, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, again, they might not look like they take much to run, but when you've got these portals opening that are essentially mirroring other areas that you need to be able to look into, suddenly the processing load goes up massively. Plus, these have Stephen Merchant in them voicing it.
Yeah, he's in the second one, isn't he? So obviously, I never got that far, but I've heard kind of some of the little quips and witticisms that he does say, you know, through his voice acting, and that just brought a whole new level of charm to it, didn't it?
Yeah, this is brilliant. Well worth and a brilliant port on the Switch. Lovely.
Okay, next one then, one that I'm sure would have been on a previous list, but deserves to be mentioned again. This is The Witcher 3.
So The Witcher 3, we are going to be getting some updates to this as well. Now, I just read in a comment yesterday that we're not getting the full graphical updates, and I didn't expect that, and that's not what I meant when I alluded to this in another video. But I do think we'll get another patch that potentially improves things a little bit more. But since launch, this one has always run at 30 FPS, a bit muddy, but it has been improved in that regard quite significantly. I mean, it really is quite impressive.
Yeah, and obviously these games, you know, ones like The Witcher and a few that are going to be mentioned in a moment, obviously these existed on the Switch before the Steam Deck was a thing. So to play them portably, this was the only way that was possible, you know, and it was, you know, when it released, it was very impressive what they did, and the fact that they squeezed it all onto a cartridge.
And this is one of the few games where you couldn't say, oh, this ran on the Xbox 360, so it should run on the Switch. You know, this was like current gen at the time.
Yes.
So it was very impressive from that. Everyone was like, no chance. I am a bit disappointed that we haven't, and it's similar, that we haven't seen Kingdom Come Deliverance, which was supposed to come out this year.
Yes.
Which, again, is another one that's current gen in terms of its engine and would be ludicrously difficult to run on Switch. So I was hoping we'd get it, and that developer, I can't imagine them not releasing it in a decent state.
Well, we have one of these videos was our upcoming games for next year that we're looking forward to. That should have gone out by the time you're seeing this, so this is not a spoiler. But we didn't put that on there because there's just so much uncertainty as to, you know, whether it will turn up in time.
Yeah, shame. All right, another one that was on last year's list but needs a mention. It's Alien Isolation.
Yeah, I mean, would I be right in saying that this is probably one of the most impressive ports on the Switch?
Yeah, the weird thing about this one was that Digital Foundry did a breakdown of it, and they found that some areas were more impressive than the PlayStation version.
I remember hearing that, yeah.
I don't know how that happened. I still don't know how that happened, but that's so impressive. This is Sega, right?
It's published by Sega, yes. I can't think who develops it.
Right, okay. But so to be able to do that, I mean, it's funny as well because it's one where they could have got away with less because it's so dark.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point, actually. You know? It's a very good point. I mean, I think people would have just been happy to have it run sufficiently.
Yeah.
Even if it was via a graphical download, a graphical downgrade. But no, it looks lovely, doesn't it?
It does. And one thing that I do like to talk about when I do like my patched up and stuff is the sound. And the sound quality and fidelity is very high in this version. Like, you stick a set of headphones on and it's like, ooh.
And that's a huge part of the experience, isn't it? When you're hearing where the alien is, or, you know, what's about you in those tense moments. That needs to be spot on.
Absolutely. All right, so that takes us on to a racing game that released, Wreckfest. When this launched, it was all right. you could chug it. There's these like little you remember like Destruction Derby, those games.
Yeah.
There's those game modes, and that you could chug. It's
yeah.
funny because one of them you do it on lawnmowers,
Right.
so you got like 30 of you just smashing into each other, and you can really make it chug then. But then there's been a few patches since which have improved it again further. And
Right.
it's another one because it's got full destructibility, like bits of cars hanging off, blowing in the wind as you're riding.
Yeah.
It would tax the Switch because the Switch's CPU is just the weakest part, But it's decent, and it's been patched up to a state where it's like, yeah, okay, all right, you can make the list.
Well, sometimes I suppose it makes the list through that, doesn't it? The fact that they've gone back, and as much as people don't always like that being the case, they want it there day one in the state it should be in air quotes. If they do go back and refine it further still, then fair play, I suppose.
I do want to make an all patched up top 10.
Oh, nice.
Maybe after the 12 days of SwitchUp. Maybe in that gap, it'd be perfect. But I do really want to do that because I think it's like you say, give them some credit.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next on the list then we have No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky came out ages ago, as you all know, on the PC, and it was a bloody disaster. It was a disaster. I remember picking it up and being like, because Sean Murray had gone mad about how you could do everything. It's like you can get married in this game. You can go to Saturn and start a base, and I'm exaggerating, but he said all these things that just weren't true.
Can you customize the look of your character? Sort of. Will you be able to play with your friends?
Yeah.
Is there a competitive element to this game?
Yeah, if you want that.
Right.
Like they were obviously what he envisaged for it, but they just didn't exist.
Yeah, it wasn't like a major component being co-op or multiplayer was not there either, was it? It was like it was as bare bones could be.
And it still wasn't bad. I still put like 150 hours in.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's not. I just think hype builds people up, and if they're saying things are going to be in it that aren't, then that's fair enough. You can understand people being disgruntled, but that hype level does sometimes really cause a game to fall on its face, doesn't it?
Yeah. He's since that I don't want to say the team have put in so much work to add in all of that stuff. It is a bit upsetting that we don't have the multiplayer aspect on the Nintendo Switch version. That is quite sad. But in terms of base building and other things, it's hugely impressive. And just recently, it was in my last all patched up video, it's basically now 30 FPS all the time. Even when you build these hideous monstrosity bases, it's just slick. It's just slick.
What about that multiplayer? Is that planned to come?
Yeah, multiplayer is on the horizon. That is due to come at some point. There are multiplayer aspects built into version 4.0, which I believe mean that you could visit other people's planets. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's in there now.
Okay.
But overall, yeah, really, really, really good game. Impressive. But there is also the potential that you could play this and be like, I'm bored.
Yeah.
Because it is very much you have to create your own fun.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Right, the penultimate game on the list then, or games actually in this case, is the Crysis Remastered Trilogy.
Absolutely. So these are 3 of the best first-person shooters that we've got on the Nintendo Switch. I'm sure they'll make another list. And they're essentially running on the Cry engine, which is actually quite an efficient engine. It can run some very impressive things on low-spec systems, despite all the cliches of, can it run Crysis and all of that stuff. And they got it running. I think it's very impressive visually. I've seen some comments where people are like, oh, it's terrible compared to the PC. And I'm like, okay.
It stands to reason, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. It is a shame it doesn't have multiplayer in any, form, but they're very much single-player focused first-person shooters. Your nano suit, all of your abilities. It's sandboxy as well. Enter an area, solve it how you want. I like them a lot. And they've got gyro.
There we go. Piece de resistance. And the final one then, last but not least, we have Skyrim.
Yeah, it's funny mentioning Skyrim. Obviously, this has been out for ages, but it's just received the Skyrim Anniversary Bundle update.
Yes.
So you can buy the whole thing. I think it was like 50% off last week. But when they launched it, it was just a mess. It really was. Because Skyrim traditionally on Switch has run really well. But this update adds in, I'm not sure if you realise, it adds all the mods.
Oh, really?
So you've got hundreds and hundreds of mods.
Oh, wow, okay.
From the community and from other places that have then been put onto this. And you're talking about like entirely new quest lines, new armors, like thousands and thousands of hours essentially of new content.
Yeah.
But they just like got it and just went There you go. And that was a steaming pile of something that didn't run very well.
Wow, okay.
And then since that, they've patched it back up again. So it's now working well, and you've got all that extra content. So it deserves a mention, I think.
Yeah, I say so. I would say so.
Brilliant. Let us know what your best ports of the year have been and the ones that have really captured your attention. And other than that, yeah, thanks for watching.
Absolutely, yeah. Don't forget that you can save 10% on your eShop cards if you use our website, switchup.gg. The people that help us run that are the people that are providing the Switch OLED for our competition. So obviously, the more that you use that website, the more engagement they see, and the more often, hopefully, we can do things like this in the future. To enter that, all you need to do is leave a comment basically in the videos over the course of the 12 days. Be engaged, do all the things that you need to do, and then we will pick someone on Christmas Eve. Yeah, make sure those comments are normal. You know, we like those normal comments. Exactly.
Other than that, just thanks so much for watching. Thanks to our Patreons and our subscribers, and to everyone else, really. And make sure to send this video to your nan, because she loves ports.
She'd like to see it, yeah.
She would.
Sure
She's
would.
knitting, she's like, ooh, ports, I'll watch that. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya.